NCT 127 is 4th gen K-pop. They're leading the way. There's no such thing as 4th gen K-pop. You don't even know what you're talking about. And if there was, clearly it would have been 17. Excuse me, but you're both wrong, because clearly Mamamoo and Red Velvet, the second half of their career from Bad Boy Up, is 4th gen. Those are actual comments I read from people on video forums and comment sections, etc. So what is the 4th generation of K-pop? Is it already here? Is it yet to come? Let's explore in this episode of Kpop Rantz.
Do you feel the vibes?
What's up, everybody? Big Will, Kpop for Life, coming back at you. And I was asked a very interesting question from one of my subscribers, Autumn Haru. And she asked, how do you think 4th generation K-pop will be? For example, will it have a new sound? Are there going to be new concepts? Will it be as popular as 3rd gen? Will Big Hit Entertainment debut a girl group? What will change in K-pop? I found this question very interesting because I honestly haven't thought very much about 4th gen. I just know we're in 3rd gen, which makes you think and it makes you look back. What was 1st gen? What was 2nd gen? And what comprises 3rd gen? What begins each generation? Is there a definable moment? Is there a specific thing that creates the next generation? And it's a very difficult question to answer. If you go on any forum, if you look in any comment section, it's very, very sporadic. It's very all over the place. People will have their own opinions. Since most of them are teenagers, they tend to think whatever their new current cool group is, that's their particular bias, is the new 4th gen group, because reasons that are stupid, like, oh, well, they're the 4th gen because they've done a collaboration with an American artist. It's like, well, okay, well then fucking Akon collaborated with Wonder Girls. That's not a good starting point. So, what is it? What has the 4th gen come yet? Are we already in it? How do you know? Let's talk about this. I've written down some things. I don't normally write stuff down, but you're gonna have to listen to me read. So, 1st generation idols. There's a lot to unpack here real quick. So 1st generation idols, there may be some discrepancies here. You may not necessarily 100% agree with this, but 1st generation idols are typically seen to be from 1990s to the 2006 era. So you're talking about like, I can't pronounce some of these names. Sao Taji and the Boys, HOT, DSBK, who DSBK was like the big bang of 1st generation. Like they're huge. You've probably heard them before. They were so big. They lasted for a long time. I think they're still around. Don't quote me on that. 2nd gen is typically recognized as from 2006 to 2012. So you've got a potentially like 8+ year span for the 1st gen, and then a 6-year span for the 2nd gen. So you can see it shrinking. Now, is that the trend? I don't know. But 2006 to 2012, the groups that are typically included in 2nd gen, Big Bang, 21, Block B, Super Junior, 2PM, Shiny, SNSD, Infinite, VIX, Miss A, etc. 3rd gen is considered right now 2012 and so on, you know, progressing forward, because there hasn't been a distinctive moment in time where somebody has looked back and said, hey, that's where 4th gen started. There's people that want to try. I would surmise that there's no 4th gen yet. One, because you can't just pick a date. You can't be like, oh, SM, this is actually something somebody said. Well, SM is releasing new groups. They have plans to release new groups up to 2022. So 2020 to 2022 will be when the 4th gen starts. Like, listen, SM is no longer on the top. Okay, they're no longer the record label that sets the trends. They've sort of fallen behind in that era. Not to say they're not huge, but this new era, SM has kind of fallen off. Like, they're not the big record label that establishes what is going to be cool, what's going to be popular, and the other people follow it. It's not like that anymore. K-pop has gotten too big for that. And now this generation thing confuses me. I mean, I got a gist of it. I'm still confused because some people claim that the fourth generation is already here. It's not. I just don't think it is. So I have some reasons. As to why I don't believe it is here yet. So hear me out. Just hear me out. The eras of idol music also coincide with significant events. Okay? So simply saying, I like this group, or NCT performed on Jimmy Kimmel, so they must be fourth gen. That's not how it works. The first generation was more the physical sales generation. HOT, Shinhwa, God, SES, etc. Pre-YouTube, really, because if you think, the reason I don't, nobody said this, but they surmise that it's 1990 to 2006 for first gen. So 2006 is when YouTube was basically a thing. That's how, I mean, you think YouTube's been around forever, it has not. So then you have the second generation, which starts in 2006 to 2012. And this generation was the digital era. Around 2004, 2005 in South Korea, as the first music provider sites were launched, this is the digital generation. Suju, Shiny, Big Bang, Wonder Girls, SNSD, etc. That is when the digital era began. That doesn't mean that physical sales didn't matter. I'm not saying that. Please learn to read between the lines. What I'm saying is that switch from it being a physical sales priority, or a physical sales is what determined who was big, to a digital, was the moment, a significant event that created the second gen. But you can't see that when it's occurring. You have to look back. It's a very much hindsight is 2020 thing. So in a year or two, we may look back and see a trend that we didn't see before and go, oh, fourth gen started at this point. That very well could happen. But where we are now, I don't believe there's a fourth gen, because the third generation started essentially with Psy's Gangnam Style. And that's why YouTube was around before it. It wasn't until the year where K-pop became too big to ignore internationally. This is the streaming generation of Psy. EXO, BTS, Twice, Blackpink, etc. The fourth generation hasn't started because there really isn't any musical impact that has defined the next generation. However, if there is one, then it is possible that Produce 101 is at the forefront with like the disposable idols trend. I don't agree with this. Now, that last line I lifted from the comment section of something, and I thought it was an interesting sort of a segue into the next part of this, because the disposable idols thing, I get where they're coming from, but those idols from Produce 101, they're really the ones that made it into 101, into Produce 48, and into IOI are not expendable. In fact, or not disposable. In fact, they've only gotten bigger than they probably ever would have been with their original label or group, or whatever group they eventually get put into. Because think of all the groups that IOI are in now. The IOI disbanded, and now all the groups they're in, most of those groups are some of the biggest and biggest upcoming groups that there are in K-pop. And I have no doubt that the same thing will happen with 101, because they raise the recognition of their brand so high. How can it not? But no, I personally, to summarize, I personally do not believe that the fourth generation of K-pop is here yet. What will it take is the next question for the fourth generation to begin. What is it? Is there something we can see down the road that may potentially be the starting point for the fourth generation? Okay, now this is just going to be completely me, my own bias, my own opinion here, and what the trends that I've noticed throughout other eras of waves from different countries coming to the West, and what happens to them generally afterwards, because those who ignore the past are doomed to repeat it, and I don't want it to happen to K-pop. But this is just my thought on the subject. The fourth generation of K-pop will be the biggest internationally known generation there is. It will explode internationally. They will start collabing with people from Britain. They'll start collabing with people from the US, from South America, from Latin America. They're gonna blow up. They're gonna just everything, you're gonna see these lines coming out of South Korea and just going to every country on the planet. And you already see it with things like JYP creating an entirely new, essentially, label that's completely based in China that caters specifically to the Chinese audience. And you're gonna see a lot more of that as these record labels get a little more wise to it, get more money, and the bigger ones especially. But the downside is I believe that the fourth generation of K-pop will forever be known, once it's done, as the last of the generations of K-pop where it was internationally popular. I already see things occurring within K-pop that are going to where groups and record labels are starting to pull back from sounding international, and they're starting to sound very much like second-gen K-pop groups again. And I think what's going to happen is these groups like your G-Idols, your BTSs, Blackpinks, NCTs, the ones that have that reach, and other potential groups that haven't debuted yet are going to explode internationally. People will then, the wave will start to recede, right? The K-wave's going to recede, and it's going to end up right back in South Korea. K-pop will always be a thing, but I don't believe after the fourth generation it will be a massive thing like it has been, just like the British invasion back in like the 50s and 60s or whatever. And I mean, you could even think about the other British invasions of, like, you know, Motorhead, Judas Priest, like the heavy metal invasions that occurred like late 70s, early 80s. Like, those bands are still well known, well respected, and well liked, but they had that peak, and then, you know, they same thing. It's just the way it works with pop culture kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that the brand of K-pop has failed. I think it's more than exceeded the expectations that anybody would have originally had for it. I just personally think that it's going to expand. It's going to get bigger too fast, and everybody's going to move on to the next thing, and it's going to recede back to South Korea. And personally, for me, while I know it sucks for the artist because that money is going to dry up from the rest of the world, I think it will return to its roots, and K-pop will be second gen, fearless K-pop again. And I'm looking forward to that, kind of. So that's just me. I'm curious what your guys' opinions are on this. That's just one man's opinion on the subject. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like what you see and you want to see more, please go watch some of my other videos. And don't make a decision right now. This is a long-term commitment I'm asking you for, okay? Because I want you to hit that bell button too, but not yet, okay? I'm not in this for a one-night stand with y'all, okay? I want to make sure that I'm popping up in your feed every time I drop a video. You know what I'm saying? I want to be inside of you, okay? Like, in your soul. Do you understand me? You hear what I'm saying? Okay. Keep on popping, K-poppers, and remember, it's not a trend, it's a lifestyle. Deuces.